Hello, my name is Seth Juarez from DevExpress, and I'm here with
Soma.
How are you, my friend?
Doing well. How
What
are
do you do for Microsoft?
I run the developer division of Microsoft.
Man, he makes the stuff that we love to use.
So all the developer tools, the developer runtimes, the developer programming languages, all of that, and the Visual Studio Online services, developer services on the cloud, all of that comes from our world. So.
That's fantastic. So we're here at Build 2014, and there's been some pretty exciting things for developers, not just on day one, but really on day two as well. What were some things that were interesting for developers on day one, do you think?
So, a couple of things that come to my mind. One is the fact that we are thinking about Windows platform as one unifying platform across a variety of device form factors, and the notion that you have this thing called universal apps.
Okay.
Where you can sort of open up a project in Visual Studio and then be able to build an app and easily target all the different device form factors in Windows. That we think is a huge step forward, because suddenly we always know this, right? Hey, as a developer, the thing that matters to you the most, or you got a great platform and a set of tools,
right?
And you got a phenomenal opportunity to reach a broader customer base, right? So by us unifying the Windows platform and telling you that there is one way for you to build an app that runs easily on a variety of device form factors, suddenly opens up the opportunity that you have as a developer. So that I think is an exciting thing that we talked about yesterday.
That's pretty fantastic. So tell me, how would one go about writing an app that works both on, for example, a Windows 8 device and a Windows Phone 8 device? How much code can they share? What can they leverage?
Right. So first of all, the goal is hey, you want to keep the API surface as consistent as possible between the two platforms, right? So depending on what kind of app you're building, anywhere from 80 to 90% of the APIs are consistent and common between the platforms today.
Right.
And then what you'll have to do is when it comes time to thinking about UI, or when it comes time to thinking about hey, specific hardware capability or a hardware feature that you want to sort of access in your application that may be available on one device but not on the other device.
I see.
So you may have to do a little bit of work both on the UI front to sort of customize it for that particular device form factor, and any specific hardware that you have on the device, right? So those two things you may have to do some little work, but the vast majority of your app, we want it to be shareable and reusable. So it's all about code and asset reuse in the broadest sense possible.
And I think the cool thing is that, circling back to day two, the universal app also ties into what Xamarin is doing, is that correct? And how does Visual Studio tie into that?
So basically, what Xamarin does is it takes it one step further and say hey, let's say you're building a C# application. The support that we have in Visual Studio and the universal app concept that Windows has basically lets you build a C# app that now runs on all Windows devices.
Fantastic.
And Xamarin comes along and says hey, but I can do a little more for you, right? So you take the same app logic and then go do some UI and some hardware specific work, and be able to retarget or take your application targeted to the iOS and Android platform. And so Xamarin has got a plugin that plugs into Visual Studio. It's got a runtime. It also has something called Xamarin Studio, that's an IDE that works on the Mac. So it gives you a set of tools on Windows and on Visual Studio. It absolutely plugs into Visual Studio, but it takes universal apps to a whole new level.
So now, if you're a C# dev, it's you can pretty much do anything on any device, on any platform.
You don't have any more excuses.
I know, right? I personally love C#. I always have. Now let's circle back to Win.js. You guys had a really interesting announcement. Tell me the announcement first, and what your thinking was behind it with Win.js.
I think what we announced yesterday was we want to open source Win.js. Right. The thing that we are realizing is hey, first of all, we believe in giving developers the choice.
Right.
As much as we love C# and .NET, if you're a web kind of guy and you like HTML5 and JavaScript, we absolutely want you to have a great experience building apps that run on Windows.
Yeah.
Right? And so one of the things we realized in the world of web technologies, at least, it's all open. Right. There is no reason for us to be doing something that is sort of proprietary kind of thing, right? So we said hey, how do we do it in the open? And it's all about making sure that hey, you get to choose what JavaScript framework you want to use in your application, right? You get excited about Win.js, please use it. You get excited about Angular, go do that, right? So you have all these things, right? And because it has the pedigree from us, we think that the API bindings and the sort of the platform innovation we can show through better in WinJS today.
Right.
But it is like, hey, it's an open framework that anybody can party on, anybody can use.
Right.
And basically we want the rest of the world to help us like evolve all these things in a way that makes it a win-win for all.
Fantastic. At the end of day one, there was another surprising announcement that I thought was pretty cool. For things that are 9 inches or smaller, Windows is now free. Can you tell us why you guys made that decision?
See, there are two things here. One is like, we really believe that like, hey, we need to be more relevant today.
Right.
In a world where like, there are multiple device form factors, different business models that come into place around the world.
Right.
Right. And we'll have to and business models are changing as a result.
Right.
So we'll have to decide like, hey, what things we think are directly monetizable and what things are indirectly monetizable.
Okay.
For example, if you're going to be running Windows on a particular device,
right,
and you're staying connected to one of our backend services, hey, maybe there is a different way I can sort of monetize the value that I'm delivering to you, as opposed to what I might have done in the past, right? So it's all about figuring out like, hey, what the usage model is, what does the device world look like,
okay,
what does the connection to services look like, and what makes sense in terms of where the economics is going to happen.
That's fantastic, which is a great segue into day two, when they really started, Scott Gu and others started to show us the power of Azure. What are some exciting things that you guys announced for Azure day two?
First of all, like, it's been about a year or so since we first announced infrastructure as a service, or first launched infrastructure as a service as a core capability of the platform.
Right.
The amount of uptake that we've seen has just been phenomenal in terms of people coming onto Azure. The momentum is great. There are more and more customers every day that goes by, whether you're a Fortune 100, 500 kind of company, or whether you're a small shop, right? We are seeing some phenomenal usage of Azure, right? We talked about like, hey, how Visual Studio provides you a great way to manage your infrastructure service.
Right.
Whether you want to sort of set up a VM, whether you want to create a VM, whether you want to destroy a VM, whether you want to sort of whatever else you want to do, Visual Studio now provides first-class tooling support. And that's what Mark Riznovich showed today.
Yeah, he did.
The other thing we also talked about is like, hey, nowadays, like, in this world of like, being able to have a configuration, then being able to create multiple instances, you got industry standard frameworks or technologies that people use, whether it's Chef or Puppet, to be able to write scripts and automatically configure. And we want to embrace that as much as we got PowerShell and we got like our own things. We want to make sure that like, hey, you bring in your configuration script that you like,
right,
and we will make it a first-class citizen in Azure. So we've done some good partnership work with those guys. So that was one set of things that we talked about, right? We also talked about how like some of the largest sports events in the world are relying on Azure Media Services.
Like the Olympics.
Yeah, the Olympics, right? The Sochi Winter Olympics, right? That was a fabulous, I think I'll tell you, like, going into that, like, all of us were worried, like, hey.
Well, I mean, the first time we put stuff out, we're like, hey, let's cross our fingers and our toes, right? But it seemed to work fabulously.
Oh, it worked phenomenally well, kind of thing, right? Both streaming as well as on demand, I think, the experience has been great. And I think, NBC should say this, but I think they are net very, very, very happy that they worked with us on this and using Azure kind of thing, right? So we talked about like, a variety of what I call platform as a service enhancements. One big thing that we talked about today was Azure Mobile Services and how we support .NET and Azure Mobile Services, right? That's been a sort of long-standing request that we've had, and we finally delivered that today.
Yeah, which brings, I mean, now that we're talking about platform, what if we're just too lazy to set up our own infrastructure? It turns out that platform as a service is a solution, not just to .NET devs, but all sorts of web developers and mobile developers.
All kinds of people kind of thing, right? Now, we've always said that Azure is an open platform.
Right.
We love .NET and we want more people to be using .NET, but at the same time, like, hey, if you're building a Java app or a PHP app or a Node.js app or what have you, we absolutely want you to be able to run your application on Azure in a first-class way. So that's something we've talked about it before, and we are continuing to deliver on that promise.
Now, the thing that I thought was interesting is we looked at, for example, when Office sort of showed us their start dashboard page for Azure and then the blades on the side and all that. When I looked at that, it struck me, holy cow, this is like an operating system with multiple machines doing multiple things. And in a post-OS world, is that becoming the new OS?
In some sense, like, the vision that we sort of talk about for Azure, it's a cloud OS, right?
Right.
Because all it does is like, hey, today, OS started as like, a single machine kind of thing.
Right.
All cloud OS does is, hey, I've got a data center and I need to think about it as one virtual collection of computing resources.
Right.
And what is the operating system that is going to sort of help us manage that? And that's what Azure is all about, right? So Azure is a cloud OS from that perspective, right? We also talked about today, one of the things that I think we talked about today was how we are going to integrate the DevOps workflow into the Azure portal. Right?
That's right.
Because the platform, the tools, and the management of that coming together in one single pane for you as a developer or you as an operations person to be able to do everything that you need to do right in that portal, I think is a very, very powerful construct that we showcase today, and we are delivering a preview of that today. There is more work that we need to do.
Of course.
But I think that vision is sort of very unique and differentiated.
So in essence, Visual Studio is where you make it. You put it on the cloud, the telemetry's there, the source control with TFS, it's all really there. You don't need anything else to do anything
else because you want to be able to build, and then you want to be able to continuously deploy to Azure.
That's right.
You want to be able to get insights on what is running on Azure, and then be able to improve your application, right? So that whole thing is right now on the cloud. So
interesting. Now let's take a little weird detour into the Internet of Things. You guys talked a little bit about Internet of Things. Tell me a little bit about that and why our developers should be interested.
Sure. Hey, the cost of a controller is only going down.
Yeah.
The cost of a device is only going down, kind of thing, right? One classic thing I heard recently is hey, everybody has got a sprinkler system in their home.
Yeah.
The cost of a microcontroller that you can put on a sprinkler system is so low that you're going to see sprinkler systems filled with controllers that give you a tremendous amount of data on how you are consuming water.
Right.
And so if I'm a water company, it gives me a lot of data that tells me hey, how should I deal with my customers? What kind of insight I can give my customers about what they should do, how they should do, so that we can optimize consumption of water.
Right.
Now, imagine a world where devices are just everywhere. Depending on who you talk to, people will tell you there are going to be 20 billion devices, 50 billion devices, 100 billion devices, kind of thing. And so figuring out hey, what is powering these devices? More importantly, how do you get those devices to give you data in a holistic way or in a consistent way? Because it's all about collecting the data and then doing some fun, intelligent things with the data, right?
Right.
So I think there is a huge opportunity as it relates to Internet of Things. First on the devices side, but more importantly on what the cloud can do in terms of data collection, data ingestion, data analytics, data insights, all those things, right? So that I think is a huge opportunity, and that's why developers will be excited about it.
Interesting. Now I'm going to take a little detour again because there was something I read that wasn't talked about too much. .NET Native. What is that, and why should we be interested?
Absolutely. So .NET, one of the things that people get excited about .NET is the productivity benefits that they see.
Right.
You take the productivity benefits and you marry that with the performance benefits that you get when you're able to compile natively. That's what .NET Native compilation is all about, right?
Interesting.
So it brings productivity and performance together, and that's why I think developers are going to be very excited about .NET Native compilation.
Well, let's take a 1,000-foot perspective.
Okay.
This build feels like it's much more open because the term roadmap we haven't heard in a while from Microsoft. What's going on there?
First of all, we are now the world is in a faster cadence.
Right.
Gone are the days when we have product releases every 2, 3, 4 years kind of thing. It's weeks and months and days kind of thing, right? So things are coming at a fast pace. The second thing is the world is a big place.
Yeah.
We've always talked about, in DevDev at least, we've talked about hey, how do we better work with the rest of the community, right? There are some places where we want to contribute to the community. There are some places where we think the community can contribute to us. But net, being more open, both with what we are doing and how we are doing, and providing a way for a vibrant community to participate and help in the innovation, we think is the best of all worlds kind of thing. And we've been sort of taking steps along the way over the last many years.
That's true.
But I think between yesterday and today, between WinJ is open source, TypeScript open source, Roslyn compiler is open source, the .NET Foundation, I think we took a huge step forward in the last 2 days in terms of how we want to work even more effectively with the community.
Now I'm thinking when they said Roslyn is now open source, that's crazy. Why is that such a big announcement for Microsoft?
First of all, the compiler has always been one of these weird things which people never understand what is in the compiler, right? And I write my code, the compiler does some magic, and then life is good for me kind of thing, right? So what Roslyn basically does, at least from my perspective, is it delivers compiler as a service. So people are already excited about that.
Right.
So on top of that, we say hey, the C# compiler that is written in C#, you now have access to the code. you can now contribute, you can now deeply understand how the compiler is built.
Right.
You can extend it, you can take the knowledge that you have and build more interesting and fun tools on top of the compiler, right?
Yeah.
So all of these things is what got people excited about it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Now, talking directly to our developer. Our developers are primarily web forms, WinForms guy.
Sure.
What is Microsoft doing to support them?
So, first of all, between yesterday and today, you would have seen us, deliver a lot of what I call .NET goodness.
Right.
We strongly believe in .NET. We think .NET is a fantastic, collection of technologies for people to be able to build applications, kind of thing. And we are committed to making sure that people who are writing on WinForms and web forms and all the other .NET technologies, we absolutely will protect their investments as we move forward, kind of thing.
That's great. Okay. Well, anything else you'd like to tell our viewers?
I would say, hey, I've always been saying that, as part of Microsoft and Visual Studio, one of the reasons for our success with the developer community is not just the work that we do, but the work that all of our partners do.
Right.
We got a very, very vibrant partner ecosystem. Our vSub program has been pretty good, and DevExpress has been a fantastic vSub partner for us. So I want to thank you for all the great work that you guys do, and together we can continue delivering great value for our customers.
Well, thanks so much. Now, this is Soma. Thanks for watching, and thank you for choosing DevExpress.
Thank you. Bye.